I never thought death would come while I was pregnant. People often say it's the most beautiful, sacred season of a woman's life. But for me, the third trimester wasn't glowing like the pictures you see online. It was heavy with questions. I was a high school literature teacher in the city, teaching 16-year-olds how to read poetry, how to write about the inner world of fictional characters, how to step into the loneliness of a novel's narrator. I loved teaching. I used to believe language was the last refuge of truth. But in those final months of pregnancy, I felt myself fading, slowing down, exhausted, emotionally fragile without reason. Some mornings, I would sit at my desk for hours, staring at lesson plans and unable to connect with a single word. I was afraid I was losing something, though I couldn't say what. My baby was still kicking inside me, strong, steady kicks. But inside me was silence, a stillness that felt eerily like those sparse, heavy lines Hemingway wrote, simple, empty, yet weighted like stone. I kept smiling. I kept preparing the nursery in soft beige tones. I took my vitamins. I showed up for every doctor's appointment. But something inside me knew that something was coming. Not childbirth, a fall, a rupture. In my 33rd week, I had a strange dream. I was standing in front of my classroom chalkboard, and my students looked up at me with bright, eager eyes, but I couldn't speak. Every time I opened my mouth, stars flew out of my throat instead of sound. I woke up with a chill running down my spine, as if someone had gently pressed their hand against the back of my neck. I didn't tell anyone, not because I didn't believe in dreams, but because I was afraid that speaking it might make it real. My husband Alex was calm and gentle. He told me I should stop teaching early, but I said, just a few more weeks. I thought I was strong. I thought I knew how to listen to my body. I thought I understood human emotion. I had taught it for 10 years. But the truth is, I knew nothing. Not about death, not about life, and certainly not about myself. What I didn't know then was that my body was already preparing to leave itself. If you've ever felt like you were quietly drifting away from the very life you were living, would you fight to return? Or would you let yourself slip silently into the distance? That morning, I woke up with a strange sensation, as if I were living in a world that had lost all sound. The sky outside my window was a dull, silent gray. Even the light filtering through the curtains felt faded, like a memory slipping away. I moved slowly, as though my body no longer belonged to me. There was no pain, no fatigue, just a tension, fragile and ready to break. I went to the hospital for my routine prenatal checkup, smiled at the nurses, and lay on the ultrasound bed like everything was still under control. But as soon as the screen displayed the familiar image, the doctor went silent, far too silent. He called a nurse, then another. They didn't say much, but their eyes said enough. I heard the code called and saw the crash cart being wheeled to my bedside. I asked what was happening, but no one answered. Then I felt warm blood spilling beneath my belly. I looked down, and in that moment, the world became as thin as glass, about to shatter. A sharp pain shot through my spine, cold as if ice had been poured into my bones. I couldn't hear anything clearly after that, only the erratic thudding of my heart, and then silence. I was no longer lying on the bed. I was standing, but not on my feet. I was above my body. I saw people pressing on my chest, shouting for equipment. I saw my hair spread across the pillow, my pale face, the blood, and my husband's trembling hands in the corner of the room. But I wasn't in any of it. I stood only inches away, and yet felt like I had crossed into another world. No pain, no sound, no panic. Just an absolute stillness. I knew I had died. Not the kind of death people imagine with scythes or blinding lights. It was a release, gentle, like a final breath, let go after years of holding it in. I felt myself being untethered from gravity, from time, from the name Sierra. No fear, no regret, just a sense that I had finally returned to where I truly belonged. There was no one left to hold me back. Nothing more I needed to do. I simply drifted away. Ahead of me stretched a vast space. No walls, no ceiling, no ground. Only darkness, silent and endless. And in the center of that darkness was something. no shape, no light, but it was calling to me. Not with words, but with a pull as familiar as a mother's warmth, as intimate as a whisper from within the soul. I didn't walk, I didn't fly, I don't know how, but I was moving toward it. And that was the moment the true journey began. I didn't know where I was, but the familiarity was haunting. It felt like I had been there before, maybe in a dream, or in a memory that had long been erased. There was no light, yet I could see. No sound, yet I could hear. No gravity, yet I didn't fall. Nobody, yet I was still me. Have you ever stepped into a place you've never seen and felt like you were returning home? Have you ever felt so small you seemed to disappear, and yet so vast you could hold the entire universe inside you? I began to sense something around me. It had no shape, no borders, but it was more present than anyone I'd ever encountered. It didn't speak, but I understood. It didn't touch me, yet I felt it opening every doorway in my soul. Each moment there felt like an entire lifetime passing through me, and I didn't need to learn or ask. I simply began to know. About myself, about my child, about life, about fears I had never dared to name. I knew why I had been angry at my mother. Why do I always worry too much? Why I became a teacher? Why childbirth frightened me? Why was I exactly here, in this chilling silence? Have you ever dared to face the whole truth about yourself all at once? Have you ever looked back on your entire life with no judgment, no resistance, no need to run? I don't know how long I was there. There were no days or nights, no clocks, no heartbeat, but something was happening inside me, a becoming, like I was shedding an old layer to finally see myself from the inside out. The wounds I had carried, the betrayals, the heartbreaks, the moments of abandonment, appeared like paintings redrawn with light. There was no pain anymore, only understanding. And from that understanding, forgiveness began. Not forgiveness for others, forgiveness for myself. Have you ever imagined that pain might be how the soul teaches itself to grow? Have you ever considered that we might choose our losses to learn how to love without conditions? In that place, I didn't just know, I felt in a way I had never felt before, as if every invisible cell of my soul was merging into a river of eternal wisdom. I didn't need to ask, who am I? Because the answer had always been there. Life had just been too loud for me to remember it. And just as I began to touch a deeper layer of that truth, something in that space began to shift. A gentle movement, a signal. I didn't know what it was, but it wasn't an ending. It was a calling. Was someone waiting for me at the farthest edge of this darkness? Was something greater than the mind could imagine about to appear? If an intelligence can make you remember your soul, then what is truly guiding your life right now? I was no longer a drifting individual, but a conscious awareness being illuminated from within. There was no light in the ordinary sense, yet everything around me began to move like a wave of spirit. I could feel a vast presence, not human, not divine, not shaped, but undeniable, powerful, and all-encompassing. It wasn't in front of me, behind me, or around me. It was everywhere. It was within me, and at the same time, it was everything I was not. I didn't hear a voice, but a question rang through me as clearly as a bell inside my soul. Do you want to know? The question wasn't aimed at my mind. It was meant for the part of me that lived beneath all thoughts, all fears, all concepts. I didn't answer with words. I simply opened, and like water bursting through a dam, waves of emotion, images, and knowing poured into me. I didn't need to study, analyze, or prove anything. I just knew. I knew the entire memory of my soul. I knew why I had chosen to be human, why I had loved, hurt, and resented, why I feared losing my child even before I ever held them. And strangely, none of it frightened me. It made me feel whole. Have you ever longed to understand everything without having to ask? Have you ever wondered if there is a place where the entire memory of your soul is held, and whether you would dare to step inside it? I began to see moments of my life that I had forgotten. I saw myself at 7 years old, standing by the ocean, crying while my parents argued. I saw myself in front of my classroom, my heart trembling as a student grasped a metaphor for the first time in a Sylvia Plath poem. I saw myself at 23, nearly going through with an abortion, then breaking down in a bathroom because I realized I couldn't go through with it. No one was showing these memories to me. There was no screen replaying my past. I wasn't watching them. I was becoming them. As if each of those moments were still alive, untouched by time. And even in this unnameable state of being, I could feel everything again, fully and clearly. These weren't just memories, they were lessons. Every choice I had ever made was teaching me something. Every mistake I had stumbled through carried meaning. Not meaning to excuse, but meaning to understand. I saw myself in everyone I had ever hurt. I saw the cracks in other people's hearts, reflecting the fears inside my own. I was no longer Sierra. I was part of a vast field of awareness where all souls were learning together. So, if we're not humans trying to gain experience, but souls learning how to be human, then what is the real lesson? Could it be that the truth about who we are doesn't lie in what we remember, but in what we once chose to forget? I no longer clung to the idea of a separate self, because the deeper I went, the more the I faded like early morning mist. In that realm, you don't ask with your mouth, and you don't listen with your ears, because whatever needs to be known arrives in perfect timing, in ways no one can control. It wasn't knowledge you memorized or something someone told you. It was a strange kind of downloading, streams of wisdom pouring into my soul like warm light filtering through an invisible dome. I didn't try to understand, I just let it soak in. Each stream of truth felt like a memory I had never remembered, but now returned with haunting clarity. Have you ever come across something so deeply true to your core that you couldn't tell whether you had always known it? I was shown concepts that don't exist in books. The soul before incarnation, the mutual agreements between souls, the choosing of settings, of pain, of challenges. I saw myself in a kind of soul school where, before I was born, I had agreed to learn the lessons of loss, to become a mother, to face the challenge of unconditional love. I saw the soul of my child, gentle, young, but radiant with light. It had chosen to come to me, not to stay long, but to activate something greater within me. I didn't fully grasp its meaning at that moment, but I felt an undeniable truth. Everything has a reason, even pain, even loss, even death. Have you ever wondered if your soul chose this journey not to be happy, but to remember who you are? I was also shown countless threads of energy connecting people like a web of light. Every thought, every word, every action created ripples. And those ripples never vanished. They moved through time, affected others, and returned to us. Nothing disappears. No emotion leaves without a trace. I saw the moments I had hurt others, moments that seemed so small, yet they created emotional spirals that traveled far. And I saw the times when a single kind word, a silent hug, had restored a soul that was about to break. Have you ever paused to consider that one small choice you make today might change your soul in another lifetime? I realized that everything in life is a classroom, and each of us is a student enrolled in a unique and personal course, yet somehow we're all learning together. No one is above, no one is beneath. We're just in different parts of the curriculum. I didn't see anyone judging me. The only thing reflecting at me was everything I had ever sown. There were no rewards, no punishments, only mirrors. And through those reflections came awakening. So if you were given the chance to see what your soul is learning right now, would you choose to keep going, or would you ask to start all over? What if the truth you've been searching for all along has been trying to find its way back to you? Just when I thought I had absorbed enough, understood enough, and been healed enough to dissolve into that light forever, a new presence appeared. It had no shape, no gender, no name, yet I could feel clearly that it was a higher form of intelligence, ancient, vast, and more compassionate than anything I had ever known. It didn't command or instruct or impose, it simply asked. One question, as gentle as a breeze, yet it sent tremors through every part of my awareness. Do you want to stay or go back? The question didn't pass through my ears, it moved straight into my soul. There was no time to think, but every moment of hesitation opened a new layer of memory. I saw the face of my child, the one I had never met, but I knew those eyes. They belonged to my baby. I saw my husband sitting alone in the hospital hallway, his face buried in his hands, not crying out loud, but his soul breaking into pieces. I saw my mother calling my father, divorced long ago, just to say she's in critical condition. I saw every person I had ever touched, even briefly, and how even a single glance from me had sent ripples into their lives. And then I saw myself, if I chose to stay. A realm of eternal light, no pain, no separation, no longing, but also no chance to love again. Have you ever had to choose between eternal peace and a heart that still hasn't fully lived? I asked from my soul, if I go back, will I lose this child? The presence didn't answer with a yes or no. It responded with a knowing that told me nothing is guaranteed. No one is promised anything, but every choice carries its sacred weight. If I stayed, I would rest. If I returned, I might hurt again, but I would also have the chance to keep loving, keep writing, keep living with the awareness I had just been given. Have you ever been handed two doors and known that both are right, but only one carries the promise your soul made to another? I didn't choose with my mind. I chose with a pulse from a place where no heart was beating. I chose to go back. Not because I feared death, but because I had never truly lived in alignment with my soul. I hadn't written the book I had always dreamed of. I hadn't spoken the forgiveness I had carried for years. I hadn't held my child and felt it with a heart completely awake. And I knew that if I returned, I would not be the same. Have you ever wondered how many of us are alive, yet not fully awake? If you were given the chance to live again, but with a soul that had awakened, what would you do with that life? I woke up to the steady sound of hospital machines pulsing in my ears, like a drumbeat from the living world calling my soul back from where it had wandered. The room was all white, the air filled with the sharp scent of antiseptic, the fluorescent lights dim and lifeless. But nothing felt familiar, nothing felt the same. I could feel everything, the chill on my cheek, the quick breathing of someone nearby, the warmth of a hand resting on mine. It was Alex. He was crying. For the first time, I saw his tears fall without him trying to hide them. I couldn't move, but tears streamed down my face. Not because of pain, but because I knew I had come back, and I knew that nothing would ever be the same. Have you ever looked at your life through the eyes of a soul that just returned? I was allowed to stay, but my child was not. The doctor spoke in the gentlest tone possible, but I didn't need words to know what had happened. I had felt it the moment my soul left that place. My baby had chosen to leave, and I had been sent back alone. I grieved, but the grief didn't paralyze me the way I imagined it would. It was tender, like a deep wound being tended by light itself. I didn't rage at God. I didn't curse fate. I didn't collapse the way I thought I might. I just felt gratitude. Gratitude for having been shown the truth. And from that truth, I could begin again, this time living honestly. Have you ever lost the thing that mattered most to you, only to realize that it was the first time you truly understood how to live? I left the hospital a week later. My body was weaker, but my will was stronger than ever. I took time off from teaching, not because of depression, but to write. I wrote as if every cell in my body were telling the story it had seen. I began to record my near-death experience, not dramatized, not glorified, just honest. And with every page, every word, I returned to that place. Not to escape, but to remember. Every breath is sacred. Every day is a doorway. Have you ever tried to live a single day as if it were a second chance the universe gave you? I returned to my classroom 3 months later. The students had the same sleepy eyes, distracted questions about the reading, but I was no longer the same Sierra. I taught with my whole heart, not just interpreting poems, but asking questions that made them listen to themselves. I spoke less, but every word I did speak came from the deepest part of me. I still taught Sylvia Plath, but I also spoke of soul choices. I taught symbolism, but I also asked, if you could live your life again, what would you do differently? Have you ever lived in a way that felt like you were reteaching your soul? If pain is no longer the end, but the beginning, how would you choose to move forward? I no longer teach the way I used to. I don't just pass on knowledge, I pass on the soul. Every class now feels like a quiet conversation between souls, each in the process of becoming. I speak of the things I've seen using the simplest words, yet they seem to touch the deepest places. I tell my students that every emotion they're experiencing has meaning, that every sorrow they think is random carries a lesson their soul once chose. No one is here by accident. No one is in the wrong place. No one is a victim. Have you ever looked into the eyes of a child and sensed that they may be an older soul than you? I started receiving letters from strangers. Some had read a draft I anonymously posted online. They told me they had died too, seen the light, crossed the invisible threshold, and returned. Others hadn't died, but their souls were worn thin from living in a world that felt too cold. They said what I wrote awakened something in them, something that once touched them but had been buried under the noise of daily life. I couldn't reply to every letter, but I read each word, and I saw them. I saw the pain. I saw the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, death is not the end. And I knew then that I had to tell this story, not just to heal myself, but to open a doorway for other souls. Have you ever wondered if an honest story could become the light someone else needs to find their way back? I began writing a book, not from a plan, not from a template. Every chapter is a piece of memory I couldn't bear to forget. Every sentence is a heartbeat from the place where I once had no heart left. And the strange thing is, the more I write, the more I remember. I remember things I didn't think I had seen. I remember what it felt like to dissolve into that tender darkness. I remember the voiceless question from that eternal intelligence, will you stay or return? I don't write to be known. I write so I don't forget, because I fear that one day, amid the noise of life, I might fall asleep again like I once did. Have you asked yourself what would keep you awake if life tried to pull you back into the dream? I know I'm not special. I'm simply someone who was given the chance to touch what all of us, sooner or later, will face, death. But instead of reaching it at the end, I saw it in the middle, and I came back with a gift. Not knowledge, not credentials, but awareness. That every breath, every embrace, every glance is sacred. And if we live as if each moment might be our last, it is then that the soul truly shows up. So if you woke up tomorrow and knew with certainty that today was your second chance, how would you live it? If awakening is the gift of death, then what is it that's putting you to sleep while you're still alive? If you're watching this video, maybe you're searching for an answer. Maybe you're hurting. Maybe you've just lost someone. Or maybe, like I once did, you simply feel like you're drifting through life without ever truly living. I'm not here to offer the ultimate truth. I'm just here to share what I saw, what I knew, and what I felt in a place no words could ever fully describe. But if I had to sum up everything death taught me in just one sentence, it would be this: nothing is random. No pain is meaningless. No soul is ever forgotten. Have you ever paused long enough to ask yourself, am I truly living, or just surviving inside a smaller version of who I am? I didn't come back a better person. I came back a more honest one. I stopped playing roles. I stopped trying to please everyone. I no longer feared losing things because I understood I could never lose what was never meant for my soul to hold. I forgave my mother. I rewrote the story with my father. I held my husband and, for the first time, told him I stayed, not out of duty, but by choice. I live slower now, but deeper. Fewer friends, but more real ones. Fewer words, but warmer ones. Have you ever asked yourself if today were your last day, what truth in your heart still hasn't been spoken? I know there will be people who won't believe what I'm saying. Some will call it a hallucination, a chemical reaction of a dying brain. I don't blame them. If I hadn't crossed that line myself, I'd probably question it too. But if even one person feels comforted, feels stirred, feels reminded of something they once knew and lost along the way, then this journey was not in vain. I'm not telling this story to be believed. I'm telling you so you can remember. Remember that your soul already knows these things. And maybe, just maybe, you don't have to wait until death to finally wake up. So what would happen if you lived as if you were just born again? My name is Lumine. I died while carrying life inside me. I was shown the full memory of my soul. I was asked, do you want to return? And I chose to come back. Not to tell a strange story, but to remind you that you are living inside a miracle, one that your soul chose long before you were born. Every moment is an invitation. Every breath is a chance to choose again. Not to choose the right, but to choose real. So if you could begin again right now, How would you begin? Don't wait for your heart to stop to learn how to live truly, because you've never lost the chance to return to yourself.